Why hello there, and welcome back to Some Weirdo on the Internet Reviews Obscure Role-Playing Games. And, it's another weird one. Revenant World was released in 2018 by Vagabond Pen and Paper, and, is a little weird, which you may have noticed is kinda my thing, so let's get into it. Revenant World is set in a world which is similar to our own, but with some important distinctions, such as their technology being based not on electricity, but on a form of gaseous energy cube, and of course the prominent existence of portals to various microcosms, which are, a world created when a human and angel that share a strong emotional bond and matching skeletons die together and combine and give birth to a new entity known as a Revenant and a world for the Revenant to rule over. Weird. So yeah, a very interesting and unique setting with its own distinctive mythology, and even more importantly, one that is explained well, by which I do not mean that everything is explained in excruciating detail, rather the opposite. Things are explained just enough so that you can understand and interact with the world without being distracted by endless irrelevant minutiae. Characters in Revenant World are known as vagabonds, who are people who have the ability to cross through the portals to the various microcosms. Characters have 4 natural stats, which start at -1, and 6 maneuver ratings, which start at 0. We are given 4 points to increase our natural stats, as well as a +1 to 1 maneuver rating, and a -1 to 2 other maneuver ratings. We choose from one of 8 races, and let's just go with Angel, which gives us a +1 bonus to our Slick, and the ability to reduce our body into a viscous liquid state. We then choose a job, and of course we choose Bard, then roll to determine our Arcanum, which is Life. We also get 1 lullaby from our job, and a lyric from our Arcanum, which are a whole other thing that I will get into later. And finally, we start with 20 eudaimonia and stamina and a jack rating of Destitute, which is an abstract measurement of our character's wealth. And this character is done. So yeah, that was it. Overall, fairly simple, but with a good number of options with all the races and jobs and arcana and such. But more importantly, some pretty unique options, like the most generic races you have here are human, robot, and bear person. The mechanics are also fairly simple. When a character wants to do a thing, you roll 2d6 and add whatever appropriate modifiers. If the result is 10 or higher, it is a success. If it is 7 to 9, it is a partial success, and if it is 6 or lower, it is a failure. If a character has advantage, they roll 1 or more additional dice and take the 2 highest, and if they have disadvantage, they roll 1 or more additional dice and take the 2 lowest results. Where things get a little different, though, is that the system is very reactive. For example, instead of having an initiative with monsters who have their turns in combat, the monsters, don't have turns, but instead, if you were to, say, attack a monster and you failed on that attempt, that would mean that the monster can then attack you. Now, this isn't like a groundbreaking idea or anything, but it is something different than what you see in a lot of games, something that focuses the game much more on the characters and their actions instead of the world and its actions. The magic system is also quite interesting and a little complex, which is why I will now explain it with slides. Spells take the form of lullabies, so for example, our character has the Bard lullaby, Ballad of Blank, and we then take our lyric and insert that into it. We make a harmonic check, and on a success the effect goes off without cost, or with a stamina cost on a partial success. Where things get really interesting, though, is that lullabies can either create or act upon a supply of the lyric being used. So, for example, our Ballad of Blood, which incidentally sounds metal AF, creates a supply of blood, which could then be used by another character with the blood or water lyric. Basically, you can link together different lyrics by creating and modifying the various substances to create various magical combos. And that is basically it. There's of course a lot of stuff that I'm leaving out because I can't take the time to cover literally everything, but that should be enough to give you a basic idea of the system. In terms of content, the game has a modest selection of very thematically appropriate monsters, but not much in the way of equipment. However, it does have rules for making equipment, which is more important in my opinion, and also a full system of item synthesis, which is basically taking two items and smushing them together into one item that has properties of both, which is not as complicated as it sounds, but is complicated enough for me to need some illustrations to explain it. For the sake of convenience, let's just look at weapons, which are defined by three qualities: weight, rate of fire, and range. So there are 18 mechanically distinct weapons in this game, each of which can then be used to represent a variety of specific weapons. But now on to the item synthesis. So let's just say we wanted to fuse a sword with a keytar. We set the basic properties of the item, then any additional properties or special abilities unique to this specific weapon. And once all of that's done, we use some math to determine the experience point cost to synthesize the item, and that's it. And of course there are similar rules governing armor, consumables, etc., but it all works on the same basic concepts. So yeah, like I said, not exactly simple, but certainly not as complicated as system of combining two items into one sounds. And that is more or less the problem with this game. Once you pull out all the rules and explain them, they are fairly simple and easy to understand, but they are presented in a way that makes them seem more complicated than they actually are. Also, the content is presented in something of a non-intuitive order. Like, the core mechanics are like the first thing that's in the book, and because of that they are loaded with notes that refer you to later chapters. So to fully understand the rules as you're reading them, you either need to flip back and forth between different sections or just kind of keep things in mind with the assumption that they will make sense later. And like, they do. Once you get through everything, it all makes sense, but it can be a bit difficult to get through everything. Aside from that though, overall the book is okay, nothing spectacular, some nice illustrations, some bad page breaks, some fairly standard layout, but pretty good use of color. For example, the attack and defense actions are color-coded red and blue respectively in the text, so they very much stick out from the rest of the text surrounding them. However, those little touches and other like nice use of color in the design make me wish it was pushed a bit further. Like, just overall I would have really liked to have seen a more striking and intentful layout than what is there now. And that was Revenant World. A unique, interesting, and well-designed game, but one that is in serious need of some good editing. But overall, a good game once you get into it, but one that I think unintentionally seems a bit more intimidating than it actually is. Alright, thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to hit all the lovely buttons, and why not check out my blog, where I have dozens of more reviews. There is a link in the description, and also if there are any games that you think I need to take a look at, you can tell me about them in the comments. Well, until next time.